working on a 2007 BMW X5 with a air suspension concern or problem. This is a what they call single axle air suspension, which will only have air springs on the rear. And I don't know if you can tell that the rear is sitting all the way down. So first things first, we'll just get the scanner. We'll probably scan the whole car. Mainly we're concerned with the faults or what faults are in the height control module. Okay, so we hooked up the scanner, we ID'd the vehicle, and then we scanned the modules, and we're in the EHC, which is referred to as electronic height control module, and there's quite a few faults on there. Now, I do believe the customer, from what he told me, he was messing around. I think he said he replaced the compressor. Must have been with a used one. And then he brought it to me saying it still wasn't working. Being that these are logged in as not present, could have been set from him having things unplugged or whatnot, but probably start. I'll clear these and try to see if I can get the system to run, or start checking compressor since he was in that area. No faults. Not gonna log any faults since the system didn't try to activate itself. So let me cycle the key and probably pull up some information on the wiring and seeing where stuff's located. I pulled up a wiring diagram of the power supply for the suspension compressor, and when I spoke to the customer again, he did replace the compressor. He said he had a blown fuse for it and replaced it, and it's still not working properly. So what I want to do again, check the fuse, just make sure that's good, or if it's blown. But this is how it's set up. It's got a relay. Here's the fuse for the relay that provides power to the pump. The relay is controlled by the module. It looks like it supplies the voltage on the control side, and then once that closes, this fuse 32, which is 40 amp, will then send power down to the compressor, kick it on, and should fill up the system. So let's what I'm going to do is gain access to this fuse and see what kind of condition it's in. Okay, so the fuse for the compressor is located on the passenger side, under the dash. You have to remove this little kick panel, just 3 screws, and then the fuse panel is underneath. You do have to release this one screw because it swings. It's bolted up in there. Release the screw and then it swings down. Now, fuse 32 on this panel is this top one right here, which I have removed. And yes, this one too that he brought to me with is it is blown. So pretty simple wiring diagram. Maybe we'll check, see if this is short or not. But I have seen in the past where it is the compressor that blows the fuse. It's pretty much the only thing on the system that could, like I said, other than, as long as there's no obvious shorts or cars been in accidents or wires pinched. But we'll check, maybe check amperage, draw if we can get the compressor kick on. But what I'll do, I'll install a new fuse and see what happens. Okay. Fuse is in, put the key in. Compressor's running. A loud one. Usually doesn't take this long. Yeah, like I say, it's a pretty loud compressor. So he did say it was used. And it's definitely not raising. Checking. Okay. So ran through its cycle. Finally shut off. Car's still on the floor. See if that logged any faults. Okay. Got a new one. This list is not present, but and it is BMW code 5F9A. Description: control time fault on lifting. Most of the time on air suspensions that I see, anything in the description related with time, you know, and lifting or you know, level or reaching a height point related with time is usually due to insufficient air pressure or air leak, or it just not, for whatever reason, not reaching its determined height. And could be, depends how they're monitored, it could be from the compressor simply just not kicking on and not lifting the vehicle up, or like in this case, it does kick on and it still doesn't get it to the correct height. So we obviously hear the pump running. Since he was messing with it, probably go there first. I have seen where the compressors, if they are old or worn or whatnot, or run too much, where they themselves can blow the fuse from drawing too much amperage. But we'll check the air supply lines, make sure they're screwed in, or see if there's any major leaks. After looking up component locations, as far as this compressor, this one is on the passenger side, basically pretty much underneath the passenger front door. I've got it unbolted already, but it's simply there's a underbody panel right close to the front wheel area. It's got, I believe it was three mounting bolts, and I undid these two lines, but just to be able to get it down on the floor while it's still plugged in. And these two lines, one is for the left side and the other's for the right side on the rear. Hooked up here on this little valve block, and the compressor itself does have a feed which goes hooked up to a line which I believe goes to like a fresh air filter duct somewhere up, probably in the wheel well or up front. I didn't bother to go that far. One thing I did notice though, when I unplugged it, there was a little bit of moisture on that line, which obviously isn't the best thing for the compressor, but that's where it is. What I'm gonna do, I'm curious on this valve block here, just because I've had these situations in the past, and I haven't been able to go this far on dissecting or seeing how this unit works. At that time, the customer didn't want to go any further. So, plus being that this is a second pump assembly, I'm just curious on how the setup works and whatnot. Obviously, the compressor is going to activate, pump. Looks like it comes out of here, feeds this valve block, and then independently goes to each corner. I could take some shop air and feed it here, and we might do that if we have to try to check for leaks. I'm not 100% sure how that'll work. Not had to do it yet, but I wanted to look at how the whole system's set up. So I'm just gonna unplug it, put it on the bench, and see how it's laid out. It's got this 2-wire what they call a control valve here, and you've got the output line of the compressor, which goes straight into this what they call a valve block. And in here it's a 3-pin connector, 1 ground, and the 2 power feeds to control left side and right side independently. As far as this, whether it's normally closed or open, I undid this feed line to the valve block and shot a little bit of air, and nothing was coming out. So then I put a ground on the shared ground pin with my jump box, and then fed power to each other pin, which would control each valve, and then I was able to get air to flow through. So these are normally closed and only open when energized by the control module, and that would be obviously when the system's trying to fill itself up. It's going to try to get air through here and to the back, to the rear, so both should open up, and when it stops the pump or shuts off, it'll close these, keeping it from having the air bleed off or leaving it just pressurized and sealed. So I was also looking on their specs. The pump has to create about was about 11 bar, which is close to somewhere around 150 or so psi, I think is what it is. That could also be a concern, which these valves could be opening and closing correctly, and the pump just not being able to generate enough pressure to feed the system. Like I said, could be from worn pump or moisture getting in it. Being that it's really loud, I'm wondering if it's an actual pump issue on this. Also being that it's a used one, but or these could not be working correctly. You know, this could be working, operating, feeding correct amount of air, and the valve block not working right, which either the valves are sticking or the control module not working on opening them up. We could check that electrically, but what I want to start with, see if I could find a way to check the actual supply pressure of the pump, kind of start from there. So I'm gonna check in my pressure testing kit, see if I can rig something up. Okay, this is what I got set up. I was actually got lucky and found the fitting that's the same thread. So I screwed that in there, that on the supply, you know, the output of the compressor. I've got my pressure transducer hooked up to my scope. We're at 0 right now. This is the 500 psi one, since we are supposed to read over 100 psi. So I'm gonna plug this all back in on the vehicle. Probably lay it just on the floor, since we're just gonna check the pressure here, and see what kind of pressure it builds up. Okay, I've got this set up. I've got the unit plugged in. I've got the transducer hooked up, and got the meter set up. I'm under a graphing meter, and it's 0. So most of the time, if you open the door, sometimes it kicks on, and it did not. This will plug the key in. See if that kicks it on. Did not. Still not. There we go. I went in, I had to hit reset control unit. That's what kicked it on. But you can see, flat line about 53 psi. Oh, it's pretty loud. Key's off, it's still trying to run. Up a little bit. Now I got this concoction set up on the compressor. kind of just trying to overkill and trying to do a little bit of research, see what the signals are looking like, or what numbers are supposed to be there or whatnot, voltage wise, or when what gets controlled, or what you see when the valves get controlled. And what I end up doing too is I put the line back on the output side of the compressor that goes and feeds the valve block. Then that has two ports for both rear springs, and I've rigged up with fittings pressure transducers for both sides, both outlets right there. So we will see if the or what the pressures are when the valves are opened by the control module, and then this would be what the air spring would be receiving. So just curious on that, what we're gonna see with that on this pump that is already not supplying enough at the output. And then I'm tapped in at one of the feed to the one of the valves. Sorry, I'm just thinking here as I'm talking. We'll see what the feed looks like there. I was debating whether to do a amperage measurement or not, but we'll start with this for now. And then I've got I'm tapped in to power and ground to the actual electric motor part, along with the amp clamp to check what kind of amperage it's pulling. And then that's the concoction. And then I'm using two scopes for this. I've got the transducers simultaneous on the snap-on, and then the other electrical signals I'm running on the Pico here. It's not your most ideal situation, but at least it gives me some sort of visualization, and just see what activity goes on when this compressor runs. So I believe I'm all hooked up, all my settings are set up, and I guess just a matter of plugging that in and trying to get it to kick on and starting to read. Plugged in. And when it was running, the both were about the same pressure actually, side to side. What is weird or odd is as soon as the pump shut off, the channel 2 on this one just bled off. The other one's still holding. And then and as far as the actual measurements, what they're looking like. The red trace is the amperage for the pump motor. The blue is the power for the motor. The green is the valve for one of the either right or left rear shock. And on this, if you can see how the red peaks up here, spikes up as soon as it kicks on, and then drops down and then starts doing the pump motor cycling. And you can tell over here, amperage drops down a little, goes back up, then drops down. The running amperage is below 18. So there's where we're seeing that on the initial turn on of the electric motor, the spike in the amperage actually rushing in. As far as the voltage, it's voltage feed about the 11 volt, and that holds steady throughout. And on the green, which is the solenoid valve, that one also is 11 and 11.2. So that's where, so on the green trace, the computer supplies voltage, opening the valve, which then lets the pressure go through the valve block onto the outlet, which then was being recorded. Both sides getting equal amounts of pressure, which was pretty much close to what the reading we were getting here. And then so at least we know electrically that both valves are being commanded open. It's supposed to feed this right here. Pretty much goes to, or is what the springs would be seeing pressure wise. So they're at least getting fed. Pump motors being turned on and controlled and run. Now it is, like I said, it's a used pump motor. The whole thing, the assembly, it's a used unit. It's real loud, one of the loudest that I've heard. And the only other thing that has me a little puzzled was, as soon as the pump shut off, the channel 2, which I think it's this one, bled off almost immediately on pressure. The other one's actually held. Now, whether it's because my fittings doohickey not sealing properly. It's supposed to have O-rings, and I don't. I got Teflon tape on both of them. So, and that one actually did have a hard time screwing in. So, I'm wondering if it's just a matter of not proper seal, as far as actually building up the pressure when the pump was activated. Both were receiving the same, so it built up enough. It wasn't a big enough leak to where it couldn't reach the same pressure as the other side. So I'm wondering if it's just a matter of a sealing thing with the threads. In any case, if it was something internal, with the valve block, a new assembly from BMW actually comes with a new valve block, pump, everything together. So you would get this whole unit new. So like I said, pressure here was about 63. Don't think that's enough to get the vehicle off the ground. And at least pretty cool. We got to capture the voltages. And like I said, this is kind of just overkill. Just curiosity on what you're supposed to see as far as signals and stuff when the computer's controlling the system. So I'm gonna go with the compressor being too weak, worn out, and needing to be replaced with an actual new unit. So hope you liked a little bit of overkill and little neat setup we got. And we'll just tell the customer what he needs and go from there.